You're lying in bed at midnight, phone in hand, scrolling through real estate listings. Every single house that isn't falling apart costs $500,000. Laminate countertops from 2003, carpet that's seen better decades, and the listing agent has the nerve to call it a starter home. And you're sitting there doing mental math, wondering if everyone around you got a memo you missed. Here's the truth nobody wants to say out loud. It's not you. It's the math. And the math right now is absolutely savage. Today, we're going to do the one thing real estate agents genuinely hate. We're going to calculate who can actually afford a $500,000 house in 2026. Not who the bank will approve. Not who can technically sign the paperwork. Who can actually live inside that house without their financial life slowly collapsing around them. Because those are two completely different things, and the gap between them is where dreams go to die. Let's start with the reality check nobody gives you. In dozens of American cities right now, $500,000 is not buying you something impressive. That's buying you roughly 1,200 square feet, 3 bedrooms, 2 bathrooms, and a backyard you could cross in about 15 steps. In markets like Denver, Austin, Nashville, or anything within driving distance of a major metro, this is what passes for a normal house. Meanwhile, the median household income in America sits around $84,000. So we're asking people making $84,000 to purchase homes that cost 6 times their annual earnings. If that ratio makes your stomach drop, pay attention, because we're just getting started. The first wall most buyers crash into is the down payment. Traditional financial wisdom says 20% down. On a $500,000 home, that's $100,000 in cash. Say it slowly. $100,000. The median American savings account holds somewhere around $8,000. That means the average person isn't slightly behind on the down payment. They're $92,000 short. And if you think you'll just save your way there, let's run that math too. Earning $84,000 a year and saving a disciplined 10% of your gross income gets you roughly $8,400 annually. At that pace, you're looking at 12 years to accumulate that down payment, assuming home prices stay completely frozen, which they absolutely will not do. So most buyers skip the 20% and put down 5 or 10% instead. Congratulations, you've just qualified for something called private mortgage insurance, or PMI. This is a monthly fee you pay because you weren't wealthy enough to put more down. It protects the bank, not you, and it runs anywhere from $200 to $400 every single month. You're paying a penalty for not already being rich. That's the starting line. Now let's build out the full monthly cost picture. Say you put down 10%, which is $50,000 that you somehow managed to scrape together. Your remaining loan is $450,000. At current interest rates, sitting in the 6 to 7% range, your principal and interest payment alone lands somewhere between $2,750 and $2,850 per month. But we're nowhere near done adding numbers. Property taxes, depending on your location, run between $4,000 and $8,000 annually. Call it $500 a month being conservative. Homeowners insurance has gotten brutal in recent years thanks to climate-related claims driving up premiums everywhere. Budget another $250 to $350 monthly. Then there's maintenance, the cost that first-time buyers almost universally forget until something catastrophic happens at the worst possible time. The standard rule is 1% of your home's value annually. On a $500,000 house, that's $5,000 a year, or about $417 every month. Add PMI at $300. Stack it all together, and your total monthly housing cost lands at roughly $4,300 $67. That assumes nothing breaks, nobody raises your HOA fees, and the universe is feeling generous. Here's where financial math gets brutal. Standard guidance says housing costs shouldn't exceed 28% of your gross monthly income. If your housing payment is $4,300, representing 28%, you need annual income of roughly $187,000. Even using the more forgiving threshold that banks use, 43% debt to income, you still need to earn around $150,000 a year. Only about 10 to 20% of American households hit that income level. Translation: roughly 80% of the country cannot comfortably afford a $500,000 home under any reasonable financial standard. This isn't a perspective, it's arithmetic. Let's make this real with an actual household. Picture two working professionals. Combined income of $160,000, above average. Upper middle class by most definitions. They should be sitting pretty. But here's what their life actually looks like after buying that $500,000 home. Federal taxes, state taxes, payroll taxes, modest retirement contributions. Their take-home pay lands around $9,500 monthly. Subtract the $4,367 in housing costs. They have $5,133 left for everything else in their lives. 2-car payments eat $800. Auto insurance takes another $250. Gas, because almost nothing in suburban America is walkable, costs $300. Student loans, conservatively, $600. Health insurance premiums. Their employer doesn't fully cover, $400. Groceries for a household trying to eat reasonably, $800. Utilities, internet, and phones, $450. That leaves them $1,533. No clothing, no entertainment, no kids' activities, no car repairs, no medical copays, no emergency fund, no additional retirement savings, nothing. This household, earning $160,000, is spending 46% of their actual take-home on housing. And they're not being irresponsible. They're just trying to live somewhere. What does that feel like day to day? It feels like hesitating before buying groceries. It feels like the check engine light coming on and genuinely not knowing how you'll handle it. It feels like lying awake, calculating whether you can afford new tires this month or if they can hold until next month, and you just have to hope the weather cooperates. One medical bill, one job disruption, one major appliance failure, and the entire structure wobbles dangerously. And here's the thing that makes all of this genuinely insidious. Nobody in a real estate transaction has any incentive to tell you that you're about to financially drown. The mortgage broker gets paid when you close. The real estate agent's commission scales with the sale price. The bank profits from 30 years of interest payments. The system is optimized to get you into the house, not to ensure you can survive inside it. Home prices have climbed roughly 400% since 1990. Median household incomes over the same period, up about 180%. The math has been broken for a long time, and we've collectively agreed to pretend otherwise. We've rebranded financial desperation as a rite of passage. Can't afford furniture for half your rooms? That's the journey. Skipping everything enjoyable to make the mortgage? You're building equity. We've dressed up a structural crisis as personal achievement. So here's the honest framework for whether you can actually afford a $500,000 house. First, calculate your real take-home pay, not gross income. What actually hits your account? Second, add up every housing cost, including taxes, insurance, maintenance, and PMI, not just the mortgage payment. Third, check whether your remaining income covers every other real expense with money left to save. If that math doesn't work, no amount of optimism changes it. For most households earning below $140,000, The numbers on a $500,000 house simply don't function sustainably. That's not a moral failure. That's not evidence of poor discipline or wrong priorities. That is a housing market that has completely decoupled from wage reality, selling you a product while pretending it's a milestone. The genuinely smart move right now might be continuing to rent and investing the difference. It might be seriously considering markets where 500,000 buys something that actually makes sense. It might be looking at homes priced lower and accepting the trade-offs with clear eyes. Or it might simply be acknowledging that buying right now in your specific situation creates risk that isn't worth the reward. There is no trophy for being house poor. There is no prize for signing papers on something that makes every subsequent financial decision an emergency. Real financial freedom isn't about owning an asset that holds you hostage. It's about having enough breathing room that unexpected expenses don't feel like catastrophes. Run your actual numbers. Be brutally honest about income stability. Factor in every cost. And if the math doesn't clear comfortably, walk away without shame. Because choosing reality over social pressure is not failure. It's exactly the kind of thinking that keeps you financially alive long enough to eventually buy something you can genuinely afford.